Today we are going to be focusing on being able to add, subtract, and multiply polynomials. And we have done each one of these concepts before, but now we're going to start to see that our directions are going to change and just say simplify polynomials. And that could mean that we would have addition, subtraction, multiplication all mixed together. So we really want to be careful to the way the original problem is written. So if you look at the three problems that I have here, you might notice that in each one of these, that the first polynomial is a quadratic trinomial, x squared plus 2x minus 3. And the second polynomial is a quadratic trinomial, 2x squared plus 2x minus 4. And so what is difference between these problems is that our first problem is an addition problem because those two polynomials are, the operator between them is an addition sign. The second problem is a subtraction sign. And then the third problem is multiplication. And so we're going to need to be very careful about what operation is intended with each problem. So if we look at this first one here with addition, 1x squared and 2x squared would give us 3x squared. 2x and 2x would be 4x. Negative 3 and negative 4 would be negative 7. And so we've talked before about adding polynomials is really just combining our like terms. If we look at our second one, this one was our subtraction one. That means our first polynomial is going to remain the same, but our second polynomial, that negative, is going to be distributed into that, changing this to a negative 2x squared, a negative 2x, and a positive 4. And then after do that, we're going to combine like terms. So 1x squared and a negative 2x squared will give us a negative 1x squared. A positive 2x and a negative 2x cancels out our x terms. And then we are left with a negative 3 and a positive 4, and that gives us a plus 1. And we can already see that if we have those two polynomials and we add them, and we have these two polynomials and we subtract them, we definitely get two different results. So we need to pay attention to the sign and whether it's addition or subtraction. And then we're to look at now multiplication. So if this is a trinomial, 3 terms times 3 terms, this is 9 multiplications. And so therefore, I'm going to take and set up the box method here. Now we have two choices with this. We could do box method or we could do distributive property, your call. What we want to be careful about though is that since we did multiplication last, that we don't assume all problems are multiplication. For example, we don't want to look at this problem and think that it's multiplication and this problem and think that it's multiplication. We really want to be looking for those signs there. So I'm going to take one polynomial and write it vertically, the other polynomial and write it across the horizontal here. And then I'm going to do my 9 multiplications. Whether you work horizontal or vertical is completely up to you. So taking x squared times 2x squared would be 2x to the 4th. X squared times 2x would be 2x to the 3rd. X squared times a negative 4 would be a negative 4x squared. 2x times 2x squared would be 4x to the 3rd. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times a negative 4 is negative 8x. Negative 3 times 2x is negative 6x squared. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6x. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. So I've done my 9 multiplications. And now I'm ready to take and combine like terms. So there's my 2x to the 4th. It doesn't combine with anything else. But I do have a 4x to the 3rd and a 2x to the 3rd. That'll give me a 6x to the 3rd. When we combine up a negative 6 a positive 4 and a negative 4. That is going to give me a negative 6x squared. And then negative 6x and negative 6x will be negative 14x, and then plus 12. So you can see that obviously multiplication for this one, a lot more work compared to addition or subtraction. And so we want to make sure that we're doing the right amount of work for the correct problem and looking carefully whether it's an addition, a subtraction, or a multiplication. Okay? As we go to the next page, here are 3 problems. Notice that the first polynomial is the same in all 3. The second polynomial is the same in all 3. I want you to pause the video, try to complete each of these 3 problems, and then restart the video. All right, so the first problem here was a combined like terms because it's just an addition problem. So we'd take 2x and 2x, which would be 4x. And then the positive 3 and the negative 3 cancel out. And that would leave us with just an answer of 4x when we add those 2 polynomials together. Our next one here was a subtraction one, 2x plus 3. And then I'm going to have to do that distributive property there of that negative sign. This would be a negative 2x and a positive 3. So the positive 2x and the negative 2x are going to cancel out. And then I'm going to be left with 3 plus 3, which will give me a 6. And then our last one here was a multiplication. And once again, you can either do distributive property or box. Since I already did one with box, I'll do this one with distributive property just as an example. So I would take this 2x, and then I would put in this whole second polynomial, 2x minus 3. And then I would pick up this plus 3, make sure you use the signs there, and then multiply it by 2x minus 3. So this is going to give me 4x squared, a minus 6x, a positive 6x, and a negative 9. And so when I go to combine like terms, I see the 4x squared doesn't combine with anything, but the negative 6x and the positive 6x cancel out. And then we have a constant of negative 9. So you can see that we once again did a problem, same 2 polynomials, but an addition and a subtraction and a multiplication, and gave us 3 distinct results. So be very careful about when we're doing our problems now, what's the intent? Is it addition, is it subtraction, or is it multiplication? All right, the last thing I want to talk to you about is if we have a polynomial squared, okay? And so I want you to think back to basic, if I ask you what 5 squared means. And most of us would probably say 25, but we know what we really did was to take and write that down by itself so that we see the 5 times the 5, that this is our base, this is our exponent, and then we did the multiplication. So what I want us to look at and think about is if we take that and we move to a polynomial, the same idea holds true. If we see this 3x plus 4 quantity squared, what that means is I have to write this down twice. And then what happens here is that if I see a binomial 2 terms times a binomial 2 terms, then what should be happening here is that I'm going to have to do 4 multiplications to get to my answer. And you decide whether or not you want to do distributive property or you want to do box. Kind of switching between the 2 methods here today to give you examples of both. And so that we would have 3x times 3x would be 9x squared. We would have a 3x times 4, which would be a 12x, 3x times 4, which would be a 12x, and a 4 times 4 would be a 16. And so when we combine like terms, we'd have a 9x squared. Those two terms there would combine, and that would give us 24x, and our last term would be 16. Okay, I will tell you that our most common mistake that we want to avoid is to look at this problem and just say that if I square this and I square this, that's my answer, okay? If you've done that, you've only done 2 of the multiplications, and we know from several lessons ago that if we're taking a binomial 2 terms times a binomial 2 terms, we must do 4 multiplications. And so if we write that down, we're able to then see those 4 multiplications, whether you do distributive property or whether you do box. Okay, so let's try to avoid this common mistake. And now I'm just going to give you 2 practice problems and then have you stop the video. You can do those 2 problems and then restart the video and check your work. All right, so our first problem here is 2x minus 5, quantity squared, so we're going to write that down twice. And then we see binomial times a binomial. That means I have 4 multiplications that I need to do. You decide whether that's distributive property or whether that is box method, your call. If I were to take and do distributive property, there's my 2x, and I'm going to multiply that by 2x minus 5. And then I'm going to pick up the minus 5. Make sure that you pick up the minus 5. And then I'm going to do distributive property here. So this is going to be 4x squared minus 10x plus 25. And then I need to combine like terms, because I see that these 2 are the same in there. And then I'm going to combine to get my answer. Over here, I'll practice this one using box method. So we have 3x plus 2 and 3x plus 2. And that's going to give us a 9x squared, a 6x, and a 4. And so when we look at this, remember that that's going to give us 9x squared. This is going to give us 12x, and this is going to give us 4. And remember that we want to avoid the common mistake. The common mistake over here would be to say that this is 4x squared plus 25, okay? Remember that that's just if we multiply 2 of the 4 multiplications, so we want to get that out of there, avoid that mistake. Over here, the common mistake would be to say this is 9x squared plus 4, and only multiply, square the first and to square that 2. And so remember, we have to do all 4 multiplications, not just 2 of those.